Okay.
Well, welcome back and hope you all had a very good networking session. Now we're all set to start the session 2, where we're exploring the performance benchmarking in facilities management. Now here the panel will talk about the state of the performance measurement and benchmarking in the new normal of facilities management. So before we get into the discussion, I would like to quickly introduce the panel to you. We have here with us Mr. Bashar Kasab from MR Facilities Management. We also have Mr. Stuart McGregor, the Executive General Manager of BK Gulf Facilities Management. And we also have Mr. Mohammed Musa, the COO of Initial Saudi. And also joining the panel is Mr. Amar S. Kader, the FM Manager of Etisalat FM. And also in this panel is Mr. Andrew Law, the Technical Services Director of Tafawuk FM. And the session is moderated by Mr. Tony Martin, the CEO of Al Bunyan FM. So viewers, please do note that the Q&A will be held in the last 10 minutes of the discussion. However, we do encourage you to post in your questions during the course of the discussion. And we do have a networking lounge where you can take the discussion post the session. So over to you, Mr. Tony.
Oh, thanks, Mega. Welcome, everyone. And on behalf of the panel, we hope you're having a great day. We're going to have a discussion, as Mega said, on performance benchmarking in FM. We're going to spend the next hour or so in a robust conversation between the six of us, I hope. And please participate with your questions and let us know what you're thinking. And we'll hopefully answer them all at the end. So just to start off, I think the first question we have to all my panel is, has the performance of FM delivery suffered or improved due to the recent pandemic? If so, please explain why and what actions did you take to address it? I think we would like to start with Stuart, please.
Okay, thanks, Tony. I guess, yeah, I mean, did it suffer or improve? Initially, definitely suffered. I mean, we were impacted, obviously, with restrictions on people movement. We've still got restrictions around how we transport people about and the occupancy levels in vehicles, etc. And I think there was also a level of client getting nervous and tenants being nervous about people coming into facilities and just the risk of spreading any COVID issues that may have been about in the early days. I think now things are very much improved, focused, more streamlined, responding to clients' needs. I mean, we had clients who were having low occupancy in buildings because people were working at home, so offices were closed and we were being asked to suspend contracts temporarily. And it was a difficult time to try and manage that in terms of resource management and what we did with the cost of that resource if we didn't have anywhere else to place them. I think now we've sort of got on top of that. We spend a bit of time looking at how we manage the resource and looking at different avenues and different streams of work and business that we could do in-house that we used to do externally, disinfection and sanitization, for example. We weren't certified as a business to do that. We always outsourced it, and very early in the COVID days, we got ourselves certified with Dubai Municipality and we started doing self-delivery of that. So yeah, I guess suffered initially, things have improved. One of our key focuses was definitely about keeping our own people safe as well, whilst we were considering, you know, what the clients wanted and how their businesses were changing, and some of the pressures they were putting on us. We also had to be very mindful about our own people and the PPE and the methods of working they had in the environment, just to make sure that we were keeping them safe at all times as well. We went out of our way to segregate both our office and our labour camps as well. We opened a second labour camp and we opened a second office, segregated 50-50 of all of our staff and labour. And that was at a cost. I mean, COVID has definitely come at a cost. But I would say, in answer to the question, early days it was, we definitely suffered from it. But now I would say we're an improved business just because we're focused very much on the efficiency and the streamlining of what we deliver for clients.
Excellent, thanks, Stuart. Amar, what's your point of view there?
Yeah, well, considering the challenges, you know, that we have gone through, similar to all the companies in the FM industry, you know, it was really very challenging and very difficult. However, all in all, I would say that our service delivery has improved. Now, of course, as the gentleman said, you know, we had to go through lockdown permits, for the manpower movements, maintaining the welfare of the staff, running the COVID-19 testing for our staff, even disinfecting and our own facilities and premises using the right PPEs and all. But ultimately, it was a fruitful experience, and delivery has improved. Now, I wouldn't say that the deliveries has suffered in such a way that has impacted our clients in a negative way, because we have managed to maintain the good performance and satisfy our clients. Now, as well, the other challenge was to do all of that while managing the operational process in a safe way and in accordance with the authorities' regulations, of course. I would like to say and be thankful for the expertise and commitment of our management and our staff that has really facilitated all of this to happen and to reach to the improvement. Some of the measures that we have taken, we have implemented, like working from home, wherever is applicable. One benefit and one development is that we managed to work paperless. And interestingly enough, we found out that a lot of the signatures, approvals, and all that could be digitized and obtained online. So this was an interesting experience that we would have not really realized it without the nice pandemic. Now, on the improvement side, I would say that we have managed to introduce new services that was not provided by Etisalat Facilities Management, which is the disinfection services and the disinfection gates, which we are providing for our clients, which we didn't have before. Another point with regards to the development, what I consider as development in the service delivery is what we have found out in the optimization of the resources, especially the manpower. And interestingly enough, you could really feel the reserve power that relies in your team once they are under pressure.
Yeah.
And it's just like a battery that you thought that it has given the maximum, but when you pushed on it further, it really has triggered a reserve power, and we managed to improve the staff efficiency. So it was more on the optimization.
Okay, thanks, Amar. So, Mohammed, tell us about Saudi Arabia. How has the performance of Initial been?
First of all, like when this pandemic started, actually, we were taking with this uncertainty. None of us was ready for that kind of pandemic. None of us was ready for this kind of changes. And in Saudi Arabia, the difference in Saudi Arabia that the size of the country is very big, and we are operating in different regions. And some of our clients, they were in remote areas. In the beginning, we start suffering because just to understand the new concept of work, to understand the lockdown, to understand the inquiries, we have a huge number of staff. We are a 22,000 staff company. In the beginning, we suffered a lot through to logistics, accommodations, and to make sure that our staff are safe. Then later on, as my colleagues mentioned, this stress gave us an idea about the resource management, about optimization of our services. And we start actually challenging ourselves how we can provide the same service with less manpower, how we can provide that service to the client in different time frames. So we start implementing, like in pandemic, you try everything. There is nothing called right, there is nothing called wrong. So you start exploring your opportunities and exploring the ideas that we have from our team. And lucky enough that actually we found a new string in our team. Our technology dependence has increased. We start working more into CAFM system, IoT system, start investing in some machines that reduce the manpower. And also at the same side of the business, we looked into the welfare of our staff because we want to make sure that we are providing the service in safe environment for us, for our staff as well, and for our client. So it was a lot of challenge because we are dealing with some certain clients that their operation cannot stop. So in case if there was like one case of COVID-19, we have because of that need, actually, we start providing the disinfection and sanitization services as part of one of our subsidiaries. And we had like a team, they were like 24 hours available upon the client request. And this kind of challenge actually taught us a lot about our team capability, about our strength, what can be done, what can be used, and the performance. If we talk about the performance, if I compare it before COVID-19 and after COVID-19, I believe actually the performance of our staff, the performance as a company has increased dramatically because, as I said, exploring opportunities, getting the best out of Corona, and understanding the new norm taught us new methods. And this has impacted a lot in our services and actually increased our opportunity in the market now with our clients.
Yeah.
Because understanding, I don't want to take too much time, but understanding the inquiry from the client of the quality has now impacted the KPI and SLA. And the way that we are delivering it now, it's different than how we used to deliver it in the past.
Yeah.
So it was a great, I would say it like a fun adventure. Sorry to describe it like that, but it was a fun adventure. We learned a lot, and we are going to learn more actually in the coming.
Yes, it's definitely been an adventure. I would agree. We'll come on to SLA and KPIs later on. Andrew.
Hi, good afternoon. As I said, like the other panelists, initially going back to March time, we were severely impacted as a business. Whilst we're a large company with lots of flexibility, social distancing guidelines, nobody took these into account when we were setting up our teams. Our officers and training academy was closed down. So ordinarily, if we're going to revise what we do, we would do it through our internal training academy. This was closed. We had lockdowns in Dubai and Abu Dhabi at night, which severely affected movement. One of the panelists already said about applying for permits. We look after a huge amount of residential portfolios, towers in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So our workload actually increased due to COVID. I think if your portfolio was mainly commercial towers, it might have been a sigh of relief, but as a huge residential portfolio owners, it actually increased our workload. So all of the restrictions that were put in place came at a time when there was an extreme and critical need to clean and sanitize. Like most other FM companies, we didn't sanitize. Our regime was to clean buildings. All of a sudden, we've got to disinfect and sanitize buildings, high contact points, etc. So we ended up doing local training. We moved some training to e-learning. We moved to video training in multi-languages. Some of it was done on sites locally, some of it was done at staff accommodation. But ultimately, as the rules were changing in Dubai and Abu Dhabi with regard to how you approach your work, we had to do this, we had to do it locally. The on-site teams, we quickly had to reorganize how we did things. Normally we rotate throughout the day. So cleaners might spend some time in the lobby, some time in lift landings, some time in external areas. We couldn't do this because of cross-contamination or potential cross-contamination. So we ended up with daily rotation. Some do be in the lobby permanently. They wouldn't move elsewhere in the building. So all of this was a new way of working. One of the other things that we found very quickly with the cleaning activity, we've always tried, even though we've got hundreds of cleaners on some projects, we tried to treat it as a back of house activity that is very seldom seen. All of a sudden, we had to convert this into a very much in your face, high visibility activity, more to give the residents of the towers and the communities within the confidence that things were being dealt with effectively by Tafarloq.
Okay, excellent. Listen, Bashar, I've left you to the end intentionally. You're the client here. Are these guys telling the truth?
Well, indeed, yes, they are actually. During the pandemic, I fully agree with all of them. Means the pandemic have kept us in a situation that I would say that in our wildest dreams, we just wrote it in a piece of paper and we just filed it as part of a business continuity plan. So the pandemic situation was a true sudden rehearsal of how solid the business continuity plans for everyone was or is. Even in terms of what Andrew was saying, if you are managing a residential community, your entire peak shifted. Initially, you had a peak, at the evening time. Now the peak is throughout the day. So this also posed a new challenge on utilities consumption, on actually testing design accuracy from that perspective. What also the pandemic added is, from I would say a positive perspective, it removed the box. So if everyone had a box and we are bound to think within that box like was demolished completely out, and the innovative ways of or the innovative ideas in doing things start coming up. As Muhammad was also saying, we had to do more with less because of the cross contamination. We could not just bring in that many of, for example, cleaners or technicians on board, because we need to preserve the manpower just in case of any of them had that coronavirus. So we had to split our forces into two. We had to prepare our facilities to house individuals to maybe sleep in, to respond to any kind of emergencies throughout the night when there was a lockdown. So this pandemic have completely changed the way we think. It opened up a new boundaries for us, and definitely brought in new ways of innovation. Initially, if it was not a face-to-face meeting, it was not a meeting. Look at where we are at now. Look at the efficiency of our meetings now, the efficiency and the productivity of every individual.
Definitely agree. I felt personally that clients and the service providers, the FM companies, have become much closer together. I think we're now trying to head down the same path and achieve the same aim, where maybe before COVID, we were definitely on occasions on different tracks with different agendas, but we are getting more understanding between the clients and the service providers. Okay, the next question I'm going to ask, it kind of goes back to what Stuart said about suspending contracts during, let's say, the height of COVID, especially here in the UAE. How did your company align its operational capacity during the pandemic, especially if you had to reduce your resources through leaves, unpaid leaves, or terminations? How did that work out with your end user needs? And did you have to optimize more than the norm? Did you struggle? And how did you address it? Let's go with you, Mohammed.
Actually, this is a very important question, because as we said, during this pandemic, this has exposed a lot of our businesses into some termination, or sometimes the client has stopped the work, because as I said, we are serving different type of categories. And the most category that was affected during this pandemic was the retail. And the retail, they have stopped everything. In Saudi Arabia, the lockdown was 24 hours. Actually, we had faced a lockdown for almost like 2 months. 2 months, there is nothing in the country. Everything was stopped. We have airports, so the airport stuff as well has stopped. What have we done actually? Because also the pandemic, as it stopped the business, has created another opportunities in other areas. We start exploring into disinfection and sanitization. As well, we start deploying our extra stuff into our housing and accommodations, because we have accommodations around the kingdom. And like in this corona, you have to make sure that the back house is clean and tidy and corona free, in order for you to ensure the services given to your client is safe. So what we have done actually, this all extra stuff that we have redeployed them into our housing as an overhead extra charge, in order to ensure the business continuity, because we couldn't actually risk to have one COVID status in one of our accommodation, because if that happened, we have to isolate the whole accommodation. So we start developing like cleaning schedule, disinfection schedule. We start doing monitoring into the temperatures. So all this extra people we have redeployed them either in-house to make sure that our accommodations are safe, and we start exploring new opportunities. Funny enough, we didn't terminate anyone. We didn't terminate any of our staff. Actually, our numbers increased. We are deploying more people actually after Corona. We are deploying like the growth that we have actually reached around 25% in the Q4 of 2020. Alhamdulillah. And we had some adjustment on the salaries, which were for only for 2 months, but we kept our staff, and we were fair for them, because they were not the reason. So we tried as much as we can, or we do, to be with our staff, and this is what we had during the pandemic regarding our staff.
Thank you very much. What about you, Amma? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, we had two top priorities in that regard, which is the welfare of our employees, which we cannot do business without, as well as maintaining the quality of the service and the performance and the service delivery. So what we have done is we have immediately established a committee that included everybody from top management to finance, HSE, all were involved and were very closely monitoring and guiding to deal with the crisis. I would agree with Mr. Muhammad that also at the Salat Facilities Management, we thankfully we maintained all of our manpower, and we managed to even introduce additional staff as was required, except for the cases where the client has dictated to reduce the manpower. So the second priority, as I said, is to maintain the SLAs and KPIs with all the challenges that we had around. Now, for like projects or clients where we were instructed to reduce the manpower, we mitigated that through mutual agreements with the client. For example, if you reduce a certain number of cleaners, then you cannot man, certain areas that you wanted all of them to be manned. So it was a mutual understanding that, yes, let's modify the SLAs and KPIs, and without affecting the service delivery and without affecting the crucial services and the crucial requirements of the client. Mm-hmm. Now, for the projects and clients where we had to maintain the same number of staff, as I said earlier, what has pulled us through this is the optimization and the extra efforts and efficiency that we have managed to get out of our staff.
Excellent, thanks very much. Andrew.
Again, like other stuff there, social distancing really was the game changer for our back of house and our front of house activities. Obviously, we had to increase our staff accommodation significantly, twofold. One of them, we had to socially distance, which increased staff accommodation, but we also took two separate lines of additional accommodation for COVID positive cases, which we did have, but also staff that were affected, they were working with a COVID positive case. So obviously we had to isolate until they were tested and found that they weren't. We had a partnership approach with CIHA. We've tested over 1,200 staff to date, and we have a continuous program of testing. But ultimately, the HR department are provided with a huge amount of welfare support, because obviously some staff are quite fearful. It's all very well saying that we've got all of our frontline activities operational, but these people are working in what ostensibly now is a high-risk environment, and especially when people are contracting COVID, we've got to make sure that their social well-being is looked after, plus their mental well-being. So our HR team, we're constantly looking at providing welfare support both on sites and in accommodation to staff. Obviously, we had the same problem with transportation. In some cases, we were reduced to 30% on the staff transportation. So we altered shift timings. So once we still had operational requirements to deliver to the site, instead of buses transporting staff in, we did them in much smaller numbers, but we changed the shifts from 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock. So instead of doing a shift change at 8 o'clock, we broke it down into stages. So we still delivered to the client, but we did it in a way with their approval of the shift changes, because they appreciated the situation we were in. Fortunately, we only had one project that was, we've got a shopping mall here in Abu Dhabi that closed. So obviously our contract was suspended, and we were fortunate a lot of this was cleaning staff. So we used these then to backfill some of the shortages that the restrictions left us. So even again on site, whilst we're still delivering the activities, things like meal times had to change. So rather than people communally eating together, we had to break that down into smaller groups of people in socially distanced environments, and again, we were conscious that, people might be tested negative one day, but it doesn't mean that they could be infected the next day.
definitely.
We're very, very conscious of this. And what one thing I will say is we have been complimented by many, many clients on our attitude, not just to the welfare of the staff, but how we've dealt with the management of the contracts. So we are very much a significant residential community service provider, you know, so we have been stretched. I'm not going to say everything's been fine. It's been a real struggle. But the HR team in particular, normally the HR team is sort of back of house, they take no credit for anything. They've been amazing. They really have. All of the, yeah.
Right, thanks, Andrew. Basha, we know how exposed MR have been, especially through the retail side. You've heard it from the operational side, and we'll bring Stuart in to give his last comments on it. How has MR aligned itself here?
So basically, we had to reach out to our service partners. Some of the assets had to shut down. Most of the commercial areas had to shut down. The residential buildings, we had to double our staffing within, as I said, because of the shift of peaks within. However, the way we thought of supporting our service partners as well goes with, you know, preserving cash flows and ensuring that these guys are receiving their payments on time. So at least they have also some obligations that they have to fulfill, and that is one way that we could help them with. I do agree with all the panelists and what was discussed in terms of you know, the employees welfare, whether own employees or even service provider employees. That was a top priority. Ensure that safe working environment and safe working place is available, you know, at all times. You know, having a proper disinfection that is carried on round the clock. You know, the proper testing for the staff, the measurements for move in and move out. The entire situation brought in again a total way out, or a total different way of thinking, I would say. But the collaboration between the service providers or the service partners and the clients topped the sky, I would say, during this pandemic period.
Totally agree with you. Stuart, PK Golf.
Yeah, from our perspective, we had very few contracts that were suspended. We did have some small ones. I think probably the bigger issue we faced was about people having to be isolated if they'd had close contact with someone, and then they had to produce close contact forms, and then that meant more and more people were isolated. So, you know, we ended up being very stretched in the initial stages. We're fortunate that we're part of a big group, so we're part of the Dutco group. We had long discussions internally about trying to improve on intra-group trading. So as of July, we took over the running, the engineering and maintenance of all the JA hotels. And that's really assisted us as well. You know, it's really sort of pushed our business along to make sure we're, you know, progressive, and some of those contracts that did disappear for us have been replaced within in-group work. A bit like Mohammed said as well, we've seen growth this year, which has been very surprising. I mean, as a business, we've grown in excess of 20% since July to the end of the year, and that's not just focused around the JA Hotels contract. We've picked up some other big contracts as well. So yeah, initially it was really tough in terms of capacity of our people and servicing all of the clients, but we've been just on recruitment drive for the last 6 months now, just pushing the business on. So yeah, big impact by the pandemic, but year end is going to be a good impact.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all agreed that Q4 is beginning to show considerable improvement, and hopefully it will continue through to 2021. Same with our body, yeah, same with all of you, massive challenge. But I think we've all adapted very well when I look around the market. I think we'll move on to the question now. We've mentioned SLA and KPIs several times, and they are rising in prominence. I'm finding that clients are becoming much more educated and aware about SLA and KPIs. They're now questioning them much more, and they're now getting into more detail for reports, and obviously that the scores are being achieved. So it's evident that they've become more involved and educated. Has your company had to revisit the SLA and KPIs due to the higher expectation from your clients? Have you had to negotiate with your client to reduce or increase scoring parameters, which is relevant to the last question when we asked about aligning your operational needs and optimizing your numbers? And I think, again, we'll start with you, Mohammed.
About actually this point is very important, because let me start a little bit to elaborate more about facilities management, about the output-based contract. All of us, we know in RFPs, still the client still dictating up to certain level, dictating the number of stuff that he need or she needs in her or his facilities. And during attending to facilities management forum before and everything, we found that actually the client doesn't trust 100% the service provider will be able to provide a full output-based contract. So they were dictating numbers, SLA and KPIs were dictated. I think during COVID-19, as everyone of my colleagues said, and as well Bashar from the client side, the partnership actually between the client and the service provider has increased, which means that actually there was a level of trust now came from the client toward the service provider, says the service provider, he knows what he's doing. So what happened throughout the pandemic, actually the clients start now stepping back and giving the freedom more into the service provider, which actually drove the KPI and SLA more aggressively into the contract. So the client now says, okay, we are going to have full output base. I want things to be done. Let's go and review the SLA and KPI. And the awareness level throughout the COVID-19, I was surprised. Because as you know, like Saudi Arabian facilities management is still not mature as the level of UAE. However, through COVID-19, because I have been in UAE contracts and now in Saudi Arabia contracts, actually I have seen the awareness that happening in our clients was outstanding. The clients start demanding KPI and SLA, different KPI, optimization for resources. We are not talking about the price. We are not talking about the cost. We are talking about the client now having trust that the service provider, he can sit around the table and start telling them how we need to do things, how things need to be done. The number of stuff should be reviewed. We can do this, we can do that. So SLA and KPI is being reviewed in most of my contracts being reviewed with our clients. Expectations have increased from the client side. I think that what we have, as everyone around the table here from my colleagues in facilities management, that we have proven through the pandemic, give now a new bar to the client. So the client now says, okay, you have done this, now we are expecting that, which is good actually. And this is why I think the maturity level in facilities management after the pandemic, it's totally different than the maturity level was before the pandemic. Now we are having more opportunities. Now we are having more challenges as well in meeting these KPIs and SLA and meeting the client's expectation. As well, actually, it's creating a market need in facilities management and more into output-based contracts.
Yeah. Bashar, I know from experience that Emma have a very high standard and a very robust SLA and KPI. What have you done as a company to help your partners and service providers?
During the pandemic, we had to freeze all of our contracts, or most of them. And when you freeze the contract, the SLAs and KPIs within the contract are no longer, I would say, exercised. So we had to sit back on the table, agree to what exactly we want in terms of a service output. And we had an input from our subject matter experts, the service partners, on how that can be done. And this is how it was measured. So there was, I would say, an interim period of a contract that was done during the pandemic only to manage our way through the pandemic.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Andrew.
Like most people here now, I think there's been a considerable shift from an FM perspective towards the soft services, or the hard services were always a predominant one, because obviously affected a lot of building, lighting, temperature control, etc. But now it's very much focused towards the soft services. Security has risen in profile on the KPIs. Security guards now is not just keeping the building secure, they're doing temperature checks of visitors, enforcing social distances, stop gatherings around lobbies and what have you. But I think our customers, certainly, we've seen a noticeable, there's been a flexible approach towards the measurements of the SLAs and KPIs. They know the restrictions that we're trying to work under. Nobody ever dreamt of COVID when the SLAs and KPIs were being addressed at tender stage or post-tender discussions. But ultimately, we've definitely seen a notable shift in the KPI adherence in the soft services. But I think the clients that we've got have taken a more relaxed approach to some of the other areas. You know, so whereas they've been treated equally, they've seen the KPI increases rise on the soft services for obvious reasons, but they've taken a more relaxed approach to some of the other services, which is we've been appreciative of.
Excellent.
If I may, on what Andrew also said, I fully agree with what you said. Normally, when you go into any facility, there are sensible things and there are visible things. The sensible things, you know, it's more about the AC and what happens behind the closed doors, I would say, or above the false ceiling. But it does not really need a specialist to come and tell you this place is clean or this place is not. So I do agree with what Andrew stated. The focus on soft FM and the disinfection and the KPIs focused towards that have actually been, I would say, reinforced much more than the impact on the hard FM side. Although I would disagree, with one point, which is the AC part of it, because again, once it was announced that it is airborne, so the pressure was on the AC part of a hard FM, the HVAC team, to go and find ways on how they can eliminate that particular possibility.
Definitely, yeah, totally agree. Stuart?
Yeah, I guess pretty much along the same lines as Andrew, really. I think for us, SLAs became a bit more flexible from the client's perspective, and there was a different focus. There was other things that took priority rather than the fixed KPIs. And it was mentioned earlier as well, closer relationships with clients as well, more discussion about what was important during the pandemic times, and a slight relaxation on SLAs. I don't think for us it was a real renegotiation of the SLAs and KPIs. It was just more about sensible discussion about what was important during the service delivery in the pandemic time.
Thanks very much. Amar finishes off in this.
Yeah, okay. I strongly agree that clients have become more involved and more educated about SLA and KPIs, and they have become more demanding, as all the panelists agreed. Now, for us, for most of our clients and projects, we didn't have to reduce the manpower. Luckily, I would say. But at the same time, I couldn't say that we directly discussed or negotiated the SLA and KPIs with the clients, but rather have more understanding and interpretation some of the times, and compromises. Like, for example, when some of the clients became more demanding and having more expectations. Some of them are driven from panic or more concerns, newly developed concerns. Some client comes to you and he asks for more inspections for systems, more on the predictive, more in things like that, which is like a new norm, if you wish. Then we had to make compromises with them. You are dictating a limited manpower, and if I go and I do these extra requirements and demands, then we have to prioritize, and we have to agree that if some work orders in CAFM fail, then you need to understand, fail the KPI time, and they are at less priority, especially in the mutual perspective and understanding of both of us, then you need to understand that I can justify that, but I still, of course, would not delay after any failure of a work order, and I still have to maintain my KPI. So this was a big challenge, but not really a straight negotiation or direct negotiation, but rather compromise. Now for the clients where we had to reduce the manpower, it was, as I mentioned before, through another question, it was a mutual understanding of relaxing the SLAs and KPIs in such a way that just doesn't jeopardize the service delivery, and it doesn't jeopardize the covering the crucial required services. And in some of the cases on more difficult clients and more let's say robust KPIs, or more KPIs that could be interpreted in more than in different ways. You could have a different interpretation on how to measure a certain KPI. We have, taken a further step and make like catalogs. We made a catalog for the KPI interpretation, and we had to mutually agree with the client what each KPI means and what can be considered as a breach of that KPI.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think the most important word that you said there was compromise. I think the whole pandemic has been about compromising with the client and ensuring that they get what they want. At Albonian, our aim was not only to keep delivering the services, but also to keep our employees in work. And it brought many creative ideas, especially when clients came and asked to cancel PPM for 3 months and don't do this and don't do that. So our aim was to keep our employees in work, and we did so. And the word compromise came into that a lot, Amar. Thank you very much. There's a few questions we're getting asked here. There's quite a few interesting ones. There's a couple of them about benchmarking. So when you benchmark your services, do you use the UE or the GCC or the MENA region, or do you just use your clients? What do you use specifically? Do you go and use a consultant? Do you use your contacts in the business, or do you use your actual clients? Andrew?
Well, first of all, go to your client base. Obviously, if they're looking at going to a tender exercise, it's always handy to know what the marketplace is for the activities. I think most people, whether it's in the service sector, a lot of people are using C19 as a reason to reduce costs. But the impact of C19 on the services is a rise in activities. So you've just used the word compromise. It really is a discussion on, we can reduce costs, but usually when you're looking at reducing costs, you're reducing services accordingly. But, we tend to, each major tender exercise, we look at benchmarking in the local marketplace. We're always looking at benchmarking our specialist contractors. We're all dealing with fire alarms, elevators, CCTV, door access. There's the same activities on each tender. So we're continually looking at not just our own costs. And one thing I will say is everybody around the panel today has had an increase in costs due to C19, accommodation, transportation. I think there's a consensus there that nobody's laying staff off. We're all keeping the staff, and our costs are increasing. So ultimately, benchmarking your own activities, benchmarking your SSPs, we're always looking at optimize our service delivery. Are we doing it the right way? COVID has really made us look about how we're actually doing things. Is there a different way of doing it? By not having we're rotating cleaners during the day to stop them getting bored, but by keeping them in one place, they're actually becoming more efficient. So I think benchmarking generally, we are looking at our own services. We're constantly looking at costs to keep us competitive. But the benchmarking, we're looking at our activities, and we're also looking at SSPs with the client being the beneficiary.
Okay. Stuart, I know you would like to benchmark against Albonian, but it probably wouldn't be too much good news for BK Gulf.
I wouldn't want to upset you, Tony.
Who do you use, Stuart?
I mean, from my perspective, there's 3 aspects to benchmarking. One is definitely the clients. One's also our employees, interested in what they think and their view of our service delivery. But the other's just about continual improvement. I've always used this saying, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So if you carry on doing the same thing, you're never going to get better. So, some of the client feedback you get, and Andrew touched on it then, clients that reduce price, clients that beat us up on our contract values end up getting poor service or lower service than we would like to provide them with. So there's a balance between, the price someone's willing to pay versus the performance they get versus the performance they expect. So some of that client benchmarking has to be taken with a pinch of salt in my view. But yeah, that's where we'd go, clients, employees, and the fact that we just want to continually improve. So we'll benchmark what's out in the market, technology-wise, opportunities, and yes, look at our competitors and see what they're doing. And generally, we'll always outperform them, Tony, as you know.
I'm sure Bashar would disagree with that.
Yeah, so that's my perspective.
Okay, Bashar, on to you. How do you obviously benchmark your service providers. What are you looking for?
Yeah, when we look at the service provider, we have a pre-qualification process and method. What we look for mainly is the service delivery methodology and the innovation they can bring for us, because again, the world is going digital, and if we still where we are at now, we are not going to maintain or hold our position, in a short period of time. In terms of knowing our position, we do actually a market studies, market surveys, and we consult with our service partners, because for us, the service providers or service partners, they work with us as a client and with other clients. So they provide us with some insights to whatever their contractual obligations permit, and we evaluate our positions accordingly. And the last point is our own employees. Our own employees, they also are in contact or in touch with many individuals who also can provide good feedback to where we are at now and what can we do better.
Yeah, definitely. Amma and then Mohammed. I'm sorry, we have to be a bit quicker because we've got a lot of questions we need to address. I'm being asked to ask some of the questions. So Amma, could you give me your point of view, please?
Yeah, sure. Actually, for the benchmarking, we have started with our clients just to see what kind of standards or requirements, expectation they have developed due to the pandemic, and just to ensure that the services, they are satisfied with the services, and we can satisfy whatever extra needs or additional requirements they have developed due to that. So in addition to that, we have to maintain, of course, doing everything safely and in accordance with the regulations. So that's what where we have started. We kept an eye on what the market is doing, FM industry is doing, of course, definitely. But we are more focused on the benchmarking, internally from the staff, from the company, from the committee, the crisis committee, and we maintained dashboards of each and every project. We kept dashboards that gets reviewed regularly. Everything you can see by everybody, including the top management, how things are going and how things are developing, and if there is any hiccups or anything, any issues to be addressed in addition to reports, etc., etc. Now, okay. I would like just to re-emphasize again that maintaining the staff, along with these, looking at the benchmarking and all, we have luckily managed to maintain all of our staff through different methods and practices.
Okay, thanks, Mohammed.
Yeah, regarding the benchmarking, actually, we have done it into 3 levels. We have the client expectation, client's need, client's want. As well, we looked into the local market and the local regulation, what they are emphasizing throughout the C19. As well, we also looked into our staff, because as I said, throughout this time, the benchmark was a little bit tricky because every day there was something and the client expectation sometimes going to be high. So we have to make sure that the cost that we are looking or we are talking about should not exceed the price of the service that we are providing to our clients. So we tried as much as we can to have a mix between client benchmarking, market, and our competitors as well internally. So this is how we manage our benchmark through the C19.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to go to some of the questions. There are a couple of questions here about manpower, which is close to my heart. And the fact that we get most of our manpower from India, Pakistan, Nepal, and the Philippines, and how these countries have been affected by COVID and the impact that it's had on our businesses trying to hire and recruit. Some people are saying it's suffered greatly. Is the FM industry looking at more sustainable ways to procure manpower to work in the industry from locals? Okay, from the local schools or the Emirates, and basically to stop relying on an influx of foreign labour. I think Saudi is a bit more current with that, Mohammed. What's your point on that?
Actually, regarding the impact of hiring and through like Saudi, the market of Saudi is different than UAE, because actually to do the local hiring, it was a challenge throughout that. And there were inquiries, we couldn't bring people from outside, and we had a lot of challenge. And this actually drove us to start thinking out of the box. As Bashar mentioned at the beginning, there were boxes when we were doing the business. And we were facing that problem of bringing or new hiring into the business. We start now doing more with less. We start implementing more innovation. We start coming with a new way of doing things. Funny enough, actually, when we talk about disinfection and sanitization, for instance, disinfection and sanitization was a business when COVID-19 started in the first 3 months. It was a business, it was booming, and we are doing everything. And later on, actually, we come up with a conclusion why we don't upgrade our soft services, our cleaners, to go to that level of the disinfection and sanitization level. And we cannot find it in the market. We cannot bring people from outside. We cannot bring people from Dubai. So what we started doing we start doing the internal training now. We start upgrading our staff training skills. And during the pandemic, actually, we have opened 3 training centers in 3 different regions to bring people, yes, and to start training them with our HSE team and operators, because we couldn't find another solution. Otherwise, your competitor will take your market or will take your share. So we start emerging some services into our services to our staff to provide it to our client using the same stuff. This is why we didn't suffer from surplus in our operations. But actually, we're still suffering until now, and I think nothing will change until Q1 of 2021, bringing people from outside.
Yeah, definitely agree. Bashar, I think I've got a question that's directed kind of yourself with Emma. Clients are requesting discounts. How can performance levels be maintained at the level now being requested, and also being aligned with these discounts?
It would definitely be through technology. Invest in technology, and technology would definitely lead into more optimization. You optimize your quality and you optimize your spend. So you spend less and you get more. So technology is the key word here.
Okay, so technology, I agree, but we had a question on technology. I'm just looking at some of the questions here, performance benchmark. I think we've covered most of the details. I think I'll ask one more of our questions, and we touched on it earlier on. I'm seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing, that many of the smaller FM companies are struggling big time during the pandemic, mainly through cash flow, maybe quality-driven issues, basically just keeping that supply chain moving. What would you consider has been the main downfall in these smaller FM companies being hit by COVID? Stuart?
Yeah, I guess smaller companies have more dependency on key clients, and they only need one key client to make changes or reducing contract requirements or even suspending contracts, and it's going to impact them massively. I mean, most of the companies that are on here in this panel are quite big companies, and we've been able to flex our staff and, you know, move resources around. Smaller companies don't have that luxury to be able to do it. I guess that's the biggest impact on them. You know, most of us as well are part of bigger groups. Whilst cash flow has been an issue, we do have shareholders and holding companies that sit behind us that support us as well. Again, smaller companies don't necessarily have that. So I think that's been the biggest challenge for them and what's caught them out, which is a shame because a lot of them are, you know, they're starting off small and it's all about growth and turning themselves into bigger organizations. No one saw the COVID pandemic coming, and it's come and it has impacted many companies in ways they could never have imagined.
Yeah. Andrew?
I think we've talked about, you know, regarding performance and innovation. You don't have to be a large company to embrace innovation. But I think, unfortunately, Stuart hit the nail on the head, actually, with regard to, you know, you have a small project removed, you know, as a small company, and it could be 20% of your staff, you know. So ultimately, I think we've been lucky having the large contracts. We're very flexible. But if you've only got, if you're looking at service delivery from a client's point of view, if you've got limitations on social distancing, you've got limitations on transportation, limitations on accommodation. If you've only got a small number of cleaners, for example, on a project, or a small number of technicians, you're going to be hugely impacted by the limitations that we've had on the bigger companies. I talked before about having staff at 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock. You know, we're big enough to be flexible. Some of the smaller companies haven't got this luxury. You know, they really need to invest in accommodation, transportation, and, you know, you say cash flow, ignoring this, you can't ignore cash flow. You know, so ultimately, I think the larger companies have got the better ability to be more flexible towards what the client's looking for. But the smaller companies, even if they embraced the innovation that is taking over the industry, you know, we looked at Basha talking about technology. We're investing in technology, things like IoT for footfall, for the distribution of cleaning staff, only going when it's required, etc. Energy management through algorithms and BMS. You know, some of the smaller companies just don't have the capacity to embrace this sort of innovation, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's been clear during the past hour, my God, time has run so quick, we're enjoying yourself. What's clear is we're all thinking in an entirely different way. I think all of our mindsets have changed. As Mohammed said, I think there's a lot more trust now between the service providers and the client. I definitely see that. We're a lot more together now. I think we're both tangoing and dancing together than we were before COVID. So I think the last question we should ask, if we could give a kind of short answer. Do you think the pandemic has been a positive or negative, no pun intended, experience on the FM industry in this market? An example, you've changed your mindset, and do you now look at performance of services differently? Mohammed?
Yeah, actually, I say like the market has changed, and COVID, sadly, with the losses, God bless their souls, but as a business, it has impacted positively the business. It pushed people to think out of the box. It pushed people now to be more transparent, because through the whole pandemic, what made everyone around the table to survive was the transparency between the service provider and the client. Pushed us to go to innovation and try new things. As the last thing I would say why it was positive, because actually it did some correction into facilities management business and market. Sadly, FM market before the COVID-19 was suffering because of a lot of newcomers, like the small companies. Everyone started being an FM, and everyone started talking about like output base, and start tendering and competing actually with the prices, unrealistic way of doing the price. Because as we said, as Andrew and Stuart said, big companies, yes, they are big, but don't forget we have an overhead that we are allocating into our cost. Small companies, they don't have that kind. So they were entering, and everything, it created a challenge actually in the market, and has dropped the willingness to pay in our client. So the pandemic has done some kind of correction in the market, has increased the awareness of the FM and the dependency on output-based contracts.
Thank you. Positive or negative, Amar?
Very positive. Well, I would say, you know, it was really positive. It was an eye-opener for everybody, for the companies, FM companies, for the clients, for everybody, and it has really shed light on the need of understanding the FM industry itself, the processes, the procedures that goes into that, as well as the need for technology and the need for innovation. Yet there is more need to be done in that regard. But I still think that the market now understands more about the importance of the FM in general, and the importance of the technology and innovation in particular. Now, as another benefit for us as Etisalat Facilities Management, and maybe every other company, is we expanded our experience with regards to knowledge of optimization, and knowledge of mitigating difficulties and challenges, and knowledge of reallocating resources, etc. With respect to the mindset, I wouldn't say that we have changed our mindset, but rather refocused our mindset on the need for pushing through for smart methods, in addition to the conventional methods.
Excellent, thank you. Listen, we're running out of time. Stuart and Andrew, positive, negative, yes or no? Stuart?
Initially negative. I think the ultimate result has been positive, certainly for BK Golf as a business. It's ended up being positive.
100%. Andrew?
Well, we've been forced to optimize and streamline and remain efficient, so it's got to be a positive. Just one final one on it is because of the digitalization of the company, we've took the working from home during lockdowns into a permanent feature of our operations in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. So the cost savings we've been able to make in reducing our office sizes in Dubai and Abu Dhabi have helped to offset some of the increasing costs that COVID has given us.
Yeah, listen, I agree. It's been positive. I've never been challenged so much in my professional career. I've never worked so hard than I've worked the past 10 months. I've had to adapt. I'm sure you've all had to adapt. We've had to be very creative. I think we've become human beings and we've looked out for each other a lot more as well, for our employees and everyone else. It's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen. It's been a great session. I've really enjoyed it. I wish we could have another hour to talk about it, but I'm being told to get off. Thank you very much, guys. It was an absolute pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.